Have a look at these companies. What do they all have in common? They're all trying to keep you on your screens. And arguably, the most vulnerable group targeted by these companies are young teens who spend a whopping 9 hours a day on the internet. Being parents, you're on the other side of the screen, on the other side of this battle, in trying to keep your kids off their screens. And for 36% of parents who feel that they argue on a daily basis with their kids about device use, this is an everyday battle that they're losing. Internet addiction is a huge problem and can lead to depression, social withdrawal, and poor academic performance. But the bigger picture is that it's inhibiting an underlying want that every parent strives for, a happy, healthy relationship with their children. Existing systems today don't work because they're either too restrictive and seek to ban screen time usage altogether, or they don't provide a big enough incentive for teens to be using them daily.
So how can a self-control app develop a sustainable solution without being restrictive on teens? Introducing AVAIL, a behavioral-focused mobile app that helps parents and teens negotiate goals and rewards to help the teen lower their internet usage. Now, let's show you how this works. This is Kim, a 14-year-old teen, and Steve, Kim's dad. So Steve basically just wants Kim to lower her internet usage while Kim is craving a new pair of Converse shoes. Together, they can download AVAIL, where they can negotiate a deal where Steve would reward Kim with that pair of Converse if she meets a usage goal. There's no restrictions and no invasion of privacy. AVAIL simply tracks the amount of hours that Kim is spending on her phone. Now, Kim might be a little bit present biased, and the addictive nature of apps can make it very difficult for people to stay off their phones. This is why AVAIL leverages behavioral economics with features such as push notifications to help her be conscious of her internet consumption, a notification manager that would allow her to turn off triggers that provoke compulsive behavior, a blocking schedule that will allow her to force herself out of apps ahead of time, and a comparative dashboard that would allow her to compare her use to her dad and track her statistics. Steve would also get positive feedback reminders when Kim is doing well and alternative suggestions when she is struggling.
So why would AVAIL succeed where so many other apps have failed? Right now, our competitors can be mapped out through this spectrum, where on one side, you have apps, parental control apps that are way too restrictive and ban screen time usage altogether. On the other side, you have apps that don't provide a platform for parent-teen engagement. Rather, they're just self-control apps that teens have to download on their own accord, and the incentives are usually a gamification feature. Not surprisingly, restrictive parental control apps just lead to arguments and a strained relationship between parent and child. While the biggest hurdle on the other side of the spectrum is that teens aren't getting the support from their parents in helping them to reduce screen time usage. We know from neuroscience that the prefrontal cortex, which is part of the brain involved in decision-making, isn't yet fully developed in youths. So teens in particular need the support of their parents and not simply the solutions offered by competitors. Essentially, AVAIL is leveraging the white space in the middle, where we're facilitating parent-teen engagement in a way that's building positive conversations around the topic of internet usage reduction. But we're still giving teens the autonomy to decide how they want to manage their time to meet their goals. But ultimately, the bigger picture is that we're better and we're different from our competitors because we're looking at the problem in a different way. Traditionally, parenting has always been viewed as, what can I do to make her stop using her phone? And at AVAIL, we're changing that question to, well, why is it so hard for her to do so in the first place? And that kind of thinking gives us a lot more insight to the behaviors that drive their self-control problems. And from there, we could better target and provide solutions that actually work.
So how are we going to make money, and what is our business strategy? With a top-down market size analysis of roughly 25 million teens in North America, and a recent study that states that 52% of teens agree with their parents that they use their phones too much, we estimate that up to 12 million parents will be interested in our app. In terms of costs, the bulk of our expenses will go towards marketing our product. As for our revenue model, our app will be free for the first 30 days. After that, we'll be charging a $5 per month subscription fee, which is a competitive price against other apps in the market. To grow our network, we're also going to allow parents to extend their free trial for an additional month if they invite 3 other parents to join the app. To get our app up and running in the market, we're going to use targeted ads on social media sites like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Then we'll be going to schools to use the platform to reach parents. Avenues that we can leverage are, for example, setting up a booth at parent-teacher interviews, speaking at school councils. The incentive here are tangible gains for schools through reduced screen time usage, because studies have shown that reduced screen time usage increases test scores by approximately 6% and also reduces detention rates.
Finally, we can't forget that the success of a company comes from the team. So my name is Kim. I'm a fourth commerce, finance, and economics student. Currently, I'm working for BEAR, Behavioral Economics in Action at Ramen, and I've had previous experience as a business analyst at Bank of America Merrill Lynch, and I've also worked as an operations manager for my professor's startup.
Hi, I'm Tashad. I'm a second-year computer science, cognitive science double major. I've written apps with hundreds of daily users, some of which have won awards from companies like Amazon and Black & Decker.
Hi, I'm Zitin. I'm also a fourth-year Rotman Commerce, Finance, and Economics student. I'm currently the vice president of Enactus, where we come up with and run social enterprises and then compete with universities around the world. At Enactus, we have connections with school boards in Toronto and also legal and accounting firms. I also have a background in the financial sector, where I worked as a corporate banking analyst at CIBC.
And I'm Steven. I'm a fourth-year Ramen Commerce student as well in finance and economics. I'm currently working at RBC on an automation project, and previously I have worked on multiple consulting engagements with marketing, revamping the marketing strategies of not-for-profits. So together as a team and with AVAIL, we hope to reach millions of parents to help them, and parents and teens, obviously, to help them get off their phones and answer a more important question, which is how can we feel closer to each other. Thank you.
Have you done any research or sensitivity analysis on your price? I saw you were saying $5 a month.
Yeah, so if we look at kind of the competitive landscape right now, the top players in terms of parental control apps are kind of like Kids Lock or Screen Time Parental Control app. And their pricing for their app is also on a subscription base, and it's also $5. And we're going to match that because we know that for them, they have about 1 million to 3 million users. And essentially, we're matching that price, and we're giving parents even more, right? We're giving them the opportunity to really build a relationship with their kids, which is something that is missing in those kinds of apps.
I mean, being a parent of, my daughter's 11. By the way, I hope I look as young as you when my daughter turns 14. I'm obviously going to be coming up on that age group, and I'm curious as to the linkage between the reward, in other words, a negotiated reward, and the repetition, and whether that actually leads to a long-term behavior modification, or as opposed to a almost Pavlovian response that every time they want something, if they need something, they're going to be good and stick to the plan until they get that reward and move on. Have you done any behavior analysis on that?
Yeah, we definitely thought about that. And the reason why we wanted to kind of put this extrinsic motivation of, let's say, the converse, is to really get the kid on board in the beginning and, make that initial conversation a little less awkward. But in terms of long-term effects and how to make this product a little more durable, what we focused on was habits. And specifically, what we wanted to do was basically, how do you replace your existing bad habits of staying on your phone all the time and basically substituting them for alternative activities? Because when we look at habits, and specifically with habits in terms of you checking your phone, the compulsive behavior really comes from kind of this behavioral need of, hey, I want to be part of something. I want to have a connection with something. That's why I always check my Facebook. This is why I always check my Instagram, because they kind of have this fear of missing out. And the people who usually feel that way usually don't have a strong connection elsewhere, like their household or with their families. And so what we're essentially doing is we're getting kids to basically use our app in helping them to build habits. So here you have a blocking schedule where you could easily just drag and drop the apps into a nice little schedule for you to get blocked out of ahead of time. And the real important part is that we're really trying to facilitate that communication between parent and child by giving like Steve recommendations of what he can do with his kid for the time Kim struggles most with. Because what we're essentially doing is that we're hoping that this extrinsic motivation will definitely get them on board, but the real underlying problem that comes from them being on their phone so much, they're going to realize the other benefits because we're making it more salient to them. And from there, we hope to shift them to a position of being intrinsically motivated.
So it looks like you'll be gathering a lot of data on the behaviors of child. And so do you have plans to really leverage this data for scalability and other versions of your app?
Yeah, we definitely thought about that. I think a really important thing about our app is we're getting a lot of data on negotiations, what negotiations work best, and there are a lot of other streams that could come into play when you're looking at that kind of data. And you could say, instead of negotiations on screen time usage, you could say negotiation in terms of food, diets, working out. And basically, the other avenues that we could basically leverage this data is kind of looking at, the startup space. They're always looking to make their employees, more productive, kind of spend less time on their phones. And by using this information of how, negotiations really work, we could give them really deep insights to the behaviors that drive kind of like that impulsive self-control problem in terms of screen time usage.
We have time for one last question.
I think that's supposed to be me, but I actually don't have one. Unless one of you guys have another question.